Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to Affixify's Industry Chats. I am so excited to be back this week after a short break last week. We have an awesome lineup of guests for the month of October. Kicking us off is my friend Anna. She is an industry veteran, former Marriott. She is just all things hospitality expert. And Anna, we're so honored to have you on the show today. Welcome to Industry Chats.
Hi, Jasmine. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're excited. You have so much to share, but would you tell us just a quick introduction on a little bit of who you are, your background, and then we're going to jump into the human experience and technology today, which I can't wait.
Sounds great. Absolutely. Yes, so I'm based in London, in the UK, and my hospitalities journey is over 15 years now deep into the consumer operations side of the hospitality uh, across 4 different pivots from sales. To analytics, project management, and most recently strategy and a career break. And I'm now at this very interesting point of exploring, sort of blending that deep consumer operations with, all guest-centric tech related, looking to jump back into the industry. Part of this process is having these conversations, and I think that's how we met and we connected. So it's great to be here today.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know when you and I spoke, I guess it's been about 2 months ago. I know you have so much knowledge to share, and we were, as a team, really excited about your topic today because it makes so much sense. But we want to talk a little bit about the human experience and technology and guest journey and how these things all come together. We hear a lot of, I call it marketing noise or fluff about new tech, which is great. I mean, our company is built on finding good tech partners, but there is a part of this that we have to look at the guest journey and, all of these things, and there it's kind of all encompassing. So let's dive right in today and let's talk a little bit about, so we get a lot of hoteliers and consultants contacting us at Affixify. They want to find tech. They want to find tech partners. That's why we exist. But you make a great point that it really needs to start first with the human experience and this ideal guest journey before the discussion of tech starts, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, it's all about the role that humans play when it comes to that intentional tech selection, right? And I think this approach sort of first of all highlights that the guest journey has changed, and it has changed a lot in the previous years. It's no longer this straight line. It's no longer sequential. There's lots of it's a scattered journey, right, of various touch points and micro moments that your potential guest will go through before they actually make a booking, before they come and stay in your hotel, right? The guests are in full control. They want the journey to be obvious, although we know it's so complicated these days. And obviously, to your point, there is a lot of tech out there, right? Just by looking at the pre-arrival stage, we're talking about 11 or more different categories of technology that exist to support the hotels, pulling that guest in, and 69 plus vendors, if not more. So it's a complex environment and probably quite challenging for hotels to find the right tech that speaks about their brand, the kind of service that they want to provide to their guests. So I think that complexity is exactly why that human element, both on the guest side, but as well on the staff side, right, the employees of the hotels, is so important. Because you need to find a way to differentiate yourself beyond, having the tech. But to answer your whys, why is it that you're looking for a specific tech? What kind of experience do you want to provide to your guests?
Yeah. And I would ask you, so in your experience, how do you recommend our hoteliers or our listeners start with this journey map? Because I would assume it's a little bit different with everybody. So obviously, to your point, right? There's so much tech, there's so many categories, there's so much to evaluate. We need to start with the basics and how the journey has changed. So do you have any recommendations on, like, if I'm sitting down, I'm a brand new hotel owner, or I'm taking over and I just want to really understand, how does that mapping look like of the journey?
Sure. So I think, first of all, the whole concept of mapping is about being very proactive, right? It's about being very intentional, thinking about your product, thinking about your people first, before you jump into selecting the right tech. So when it comes to that specific mapping, it's looking at, how does this guest journey or staff journey looks like, but from the end point. So going almost in the reverse order, what is the outcome, what is the experience, and then sort of walking backwards through the touch points, through the steps that your guests have to go through, and your staff have to get through to provide that experience.
Right.
So, a very good point, a starting point is usually sort of that raw intelligence that you can get, whether you're a new hotel or maybe you're looking at a change of tech, is looking, and the information you have, and your team can be a great source of that, right? That's a huge volume of information that your team knows and can share. They know what the repetitive processes are. They understand where the friction sits. You also have your guest or the potential guest that you're aiming at, right? There are lots of reviews, maybe from similar brands or your previous reviews that you can look at and see what the guests are saying. Is there a pattern? Is there a pattern to it?
Yeah.
And then, if you are using any tech right now, I think the tech can tell its own story as well. You can kind of, again, pinpoint, is your booking engine constantly dropping? Is your maybe reception overloaded with phone calls? Can you look at that log? So they are these kind of three sources of that raw intelligence that you can tap into. And then, and then you try to visualize it, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. It can start with, maybe a particular small friction that you're seeing that you can test the mapping on, and you walk those, through you put yourself in the shoes of your guest or in the shoes of your staff, and you try and map step by step, how did they arrive at that point and what's not working.
Yeah, no, I think that's so smart. And I like how you mentioned reviews, and really that's so when we were starting Affixify, I think about one of the biggest pieces of advice I got, and I still think about it to this day, was never operate on your own assumptions. And so I thought of that when you shared that, because if you're going and looking what the guest is already saying and the experience they're actually telling you they're having, it goes from being, I want this to be the experience they're having, to no, this is the guest experience and journey right now. And then how do we meld that? And it could be better than you think, or, there could be areas of improvement. So I really, really like that. And I love that you're thinking through, I think so often, especially with AI and all of the things happening in tech, we see a lot of people just jumping to look at it and find partners and not really looking at, like you mentioned, what does your current tech have to offer you? How can you learn about your guests through that? So you have this awesome concept of, let's first look at the journey. And then you talk a little bit in our, we went back and forth on some notes here, but some scenarios. So now we have a journey, and now we can pinpoint different needs, and you say frictions, which I think is a really good point. This is like kind of your next step. So talk to me about that. Like, what would be an example of, oh, here's a moment or a need where technology can be an asset? What is your experience?
So, what if you're, let's say you've gathered your intelligence, you have visualized, that potential specific guest journey is now the kind of step where you turn the problem that you've identified. Let's say you have a long queues at check-in, or, families that arrive late at your hotel. It takes a very long time to check them in.
Yeah.
So you've identified that problem. So you now almost need to redefine it and and sort of present it as a, what is the experience? What are we aiming to achieve? Right. So you're moving from the problem to an outcome. So we want,
Right.
instead of saying, let's say, fix the queues at check-in, you can say, we want a warm arrival for every guest so they feel cared for the moment they stepped into our hotel. And I think it changes the
Right.
conversation a lot when you reposition those problems into those outcome or those aspirational goals that you have. So that would be the kind of second
Yeah.
step that you could look at.
I love that. Yeah. And then so it sounds like it's the journey and then creating goals and then going to the table for tech. So now I think about our vendors, right? So I think about all of these amazing companies that are, our industry is really unique because you have to build a lot of trust and you have to build a lot of loyalty, especially as a tech provider. So do you think that now when it's time to say, okay, here's our need or here's our moment and our journey we've pinpointed, we want your tech to support that. Do you have any recommendations on, do you think this is something where the hotel comes to the table and says, here's the problem I need solved? Either you do it or you don't. Do you think that vendors need to do more educating to, like, where do you think the vendor and the hotel balance comes now in this next step?
Yeah. So I think the ideal sort of position would be to move that vendor hotel relationship from very transactional to a partnership, right? So both really have to come to the table. One is, if the hotel has a very good idea of, the service they're looking to provide and that they need the tech to support that, I think it just changes the conversation with the vendor. It can deepen the relationship.
Right.
But obviously you still need to start with narrowing down, right? Where do you go from here? And I think Affixify is a great platform for that, right? Because you can talk about these scenarios, you can talk about those aspirational service moments that you're looking to build. And then it is a two-way stream, right? It needs to be a partnership. And I think the hotels need to come better prepared of what is it that they're looking for specifically and why. And I think the vendors need to come to the table and offer that sort of in-depth conversation rather than just this transactional approach. And I'm sure you're probably seeing a mix of it, right, out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because my past life, I have sold software. And then when I was a consultant, I was helping software companies. And the best salespeople for these companies don't really do selling. They are consulting on basically saying, I understand the problem you're trying to solve. Let's try to find the solution together. And hey, if it's not in my platform, here's something you could consider. And I love what you're saying because that's a partnership. A partnership works together, whereas there is a lot of just transactionalism. And I see that a lot too. I think that both sides have to come to the table being open. One thing I think too, and I'd be curious on your thoughts, is we encourage, of course, we exist to help people find new partners, but what if you already have someone in place? Are you keeping up with that vendor? What are they already doing? That way you don't have to go through change management. Have you seen that be successful in your experience, going back to an existing vendor and saying, how can we better partner? Here's the challenge I'm having.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, it's very interesting because it goes sort of, beyond choosing your tech is how do you integrate it? How do you drive the adoption? And, we hear stories about systems being unutilized or system being blamed, but actually there is always an opportunity, right, to drive a deeper adoption. But, it takes back into the journey. If a hotel understands why, if the vendor is also clear on that. One is you move the conversation from a tech being a cost center to being a revenue driver. And then, it opens up those conversations. We need to deepen the utilization. Can we look at upsells? What are we missing? What is the staff saying? So it is a continuous loop. And it's very important to first, for sure, maximize the tech that you already have, rather than just assuming, oh, it's not working, we need something new. That's not always the solution. But your team can be a great source of that support. They will tell you if something is not working. And the same from a vendor point of view, you can definitely drive a deeper adoption with their support.
Yeah, definitely. Right? Yeah. I think the partnership piece of that is key. And what I'm hearing from you is just this need to really, it's like you have the foundation before you go out and try to find tech. And with so many vendors, so many categories, I think it's absolutely necessary. Plus, we always say like one tech stack for one type of property is not going to be the same for the next. So it really depends on your guest, their journey, what your team needs, which I know you mentioned the team too. And I know you have experience as as a hotelier. What is the team going to adopt? What are they going to be able to utilize? We certainly don't want to use increased turnover because technology was hard to keep up with, right? So I think your mention of the team aspect here is incredibly important as well.
Absolutely. There are lots of benefits, right, of getting that intentional tech selection right. You have, the revenue growth opportunities. If you involve your team early on, they'll help you map the journey, find those frictions, work with you on the outcomes you drive. You might, first of all, discover a potential revenue stream. Because they're involved, you have a better chances of driving deeper adoption. And if they're really on board, operationally, you are going to see, great results there. You are going to be more effective and more tight on your operational side. So it's kind of like a cascading, benefit role, but it has to start with a sort of in-depth conversation, right? First, be very intentional. Test, start small, and then you have a much better chance of getting it right the first time.
And who have you seen? So from obviously when you sit down with your team to do this type of exercise and figure out the journey, who do you recommend should be in on that? I would imagine it's many people because you want a very well-rounded discussion, but who have you seen? How has this been done really well in your experience, and who needs to be at that table as far as the team goes?
Sure. So I would assume it probably varies, right, from property to property. But I always found that you can quite early spot the enthusiasts, the tech enthusiasts in your team, or those that are coming to you with ideas. Oh, I think this process is not working. Oh, I think we can do this better. These are certainly, people to tap into. Department heads usually are quite well sort of involved. They have the in-depth knowledge, what the team delivers and what their challenges are, and not just go into IT and assume anything with systems. It's IT. It's going through every department. So if you're mapping a journey for your groups or for your airline crew or for your individual travelers, if you can touch every department and get everybody involved, because it will really paint a very clear picture of where the opportunities to drive better experience with the right tech, is waiting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's helpful because I think a lot of times we have these conversations and it sounds so good, but we're like, what's the action? So I think you're helping so much to understand who needs to be a part of this. Where do you look? How do you create that map? And then you look at your current vendors and then you look for the right tech match. So I think it makes so much sense. I'm actually feeling like we need a graphic here soon where we lay it all out. Yeah, I think that's so good. Well, I mean, this is just incredible knowledge. Is there anything else that you would add as far as anybody that wants a good takeaway to start this exercise with their team? You've been so thorough today.
Sure. So I would say, it doesn't have to be a 2-year project straight away. Start small. Start in long season. Pick something really meaningful. Maybe start with your team. What really doesn't work, for them. Get them on board. Test a couple of ideas, and then go after the big fish if you have to.
Love it. Love it. Well, Anna, thank you so much for the great knowledge today. And if anyone watching is curious to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to reach me there. I'm very open to connect with other professionals. So yeah, LinkedIn's the place.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. On LinkedIn. Okay. Well, we are so thankful for your time today. For those watching live, this will also be available on YouTube later. So you can recap and listen to Anna. You can find her on LinkedIn, and we will be back next week. So, Anna, thank you so much. And to everyone else, we'll see you guys next Wednesday. We'll be talking with Ethan Glass, who is the founder of Okra. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.